We are live.
How you doing?
Hey, buddy. I surprised you with a little 30-second countdown.
Yeah, I'd like to know what that was all about.
30
Yeah,
sec 30
yeah,
second countdown.
yeah. Right.
We're
Yeah.
techno wizardry here behind the scenes. We're really taking
Excellent.
it up a notch, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Whatever floats your boat, buddy. Good to see you. Anyway, I'm just glad to actually be able to get online. You know, this is my tech issues for the day. But yeah, looking forward to today's topic as well. We've used some
Latest
time.
topic, man. Well,
Yeah,
happy New Year, by the way. We haven't
yeah.
seen each other since I don't think we've talked since New Year's. So
No, happy New
there
Year
you
to you
have it.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ready for a amazing 2022, hopefully.
I feel like I'm not ready for an amazing 2022 yet, but I'm going to get there. My brain is slowly spooling up. It's been a strange couple of weeks. My wife's got COVID. My father-in-law had COVID, so we're all self-isolating. So it's been a bit odd
Yeah.
and disruptive. So this
Yeah.
is the story of the tail end of the 2021 COVID madness, but moving into a productive 2022. So
Yeah.
I guess this is good a metaphor for everyone else's situations. We're going to get ready.
Our household got it on Christmas Eve. My son brought it home from something, work or wherever.
A gift. Yeah.
Cinnamon and I, Christmas Eve gift.
Yeah.
Cinnamon and I both started feeling it on Christmas Day, and our daughter this last week has had it, so it's run its course through our house as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully everybody who's listening to the show is on the mend or is staying healthy.
Absolutely.
And, yeah. All right, man. Well, we've got a fun show today. So if you're listening live with us on Facebook or YouTube, give us a like, love, comment, share, say hello. Let us know where you're listening from. We'd be happy to answer any questions live during the recording of the episode, as is our custom. And happy to include your questions or comments into the mix here. So give us a little comment underneath wherever you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. And let us know what you think. Today's hot topic is 10 tips for reducing the time cost of running your business. What a great topic for the beginning of the year, huh?
Absolutely. Like I think that this is probably one of the places where, without adding any money or stress to the business, we can really get a massive increase in how well we can grow the business. It's really one of those things that is literally came up in the very last coaching session I did with a client who's got a pretty established business, a couple of $1 million a year. So it's absolutely a hot topic and great stuff. Yeah, very positive topic, I think.
Yeah. If you like the topic of reducing your time costs, then give us a yes in the comments and let us know what your thought is on that. We'd love to hear what your point of view is. I think all of us, as we go into the beginning of the year, can think to ourselves a few things like, was 2021 effective for me in terms of time? Did I manage my own personal time investment wisely? Did I manage my team's time wisely? Of course, your team time turns into real cash. Write out your checking account as you do payroll or pay your contractors or whatever. And so team time is managed. It really, in our brains, I think, is as a real cost of cash. But really, it comes down to how much they spend in terms of their time and energy and how many people you have on the team. So in this episode, we're going to dive into all of that and share 10 tips. Now, we've got 6 tips and 4 questions. And to your earlier point before the show, Michael, we debated what if they're all tips or not. But there's a good list here that we think everybody could work through effectively. So you ready to do this thing?
Let's do this. Absolutely. Yeah, let's rock and roll.
All right. I'm going to do the intro and we'll jump right into it.
Just a small point before you do that. Just remember that I don't have any control over the camera, so I'll leave you to make editorial decisions.
Today.
You're cameraman. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Let's do that then. Time is the most precious gift we have in life, so it stands to reason that the wisest e-commerce operator is the one who manages time most efficiently. That includes his or her personal time in the business, as well as the minimum time required by the team to hit revenue goals. In this episode, we're going to share 10 techniques for optimizing for time to reduce the total amount of time it takes to run your e-commerce business. Michael, are you ready to jump into this fun topic?
Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic topic. It's a really positive one. because we all have 24 hours a day. So in a way, you can manage your time as well as Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or anyone else. Oh, okay, you can't. Probably in theory you could. Whereas money is a legitimate constraint that we think we don't have, other people do, and so forth. So it's a really great one across the board, whether you're a billionaire or just starting out. A really massive fan of this. And the last time I coached somebody who is doing a couple of $1 million a year, actually an American client, this is exactly the topic we talked about the time before last, actually, in order to buy him time to implement the bigger picture stuff. So it's a fantastic topic. Love it.
Yeah, I totally agree. A lot of the clients that we work as well are sort of in this life cycle of thinking through what their exit will be for their business. And of course, it comes down to this topic. It always comes down to this topic. What is your personal time required in the business? Well, if you sell your business, even if you go, find a buyer who says, yes, I'll give you a pile of money, you've got to have that machine running without you, and think through how could it work without your personal time, and then the reality associated with the cost of your time. So yeah, this is a valuable topic for many, many reasons, I think, for our coaching clients that we work with and for our whole community that we support. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. So, but nevertheless, it's interesting that you hit on this topic today. We were going to discuss something different, and then this came out for you. So, what is behind the the choice of topic? What has interested you or piqued your interest?
pain.
Very unlike you, Jason.
To quote Clubber Lang from Rocky 3, pain. Yeah, this is a hard topic, isn't it? And so all of us, have our personal challenges related to this. I want to get better at this, and it's a good time of the year for us to think through what is our personal time commitment for our businesses and for the amount of money we receive from them. And if you don't need more money from your business, then you probably want to put less time into your business. I mean, it's sort of mathematical in a way. If you're happy with your net profit, then the only other thing to fiddle around with is how much time you spend to make that net profit. It's sort of, the time. That's the investment mindset, I think, for time. That's why I labeled this reducing the time cost.
Yeah.
And I think if we think about the time cost as an expenditure, that's the thinking that I kind of went into this today.
I like that a lot. And I think that relates to the metric by James Schramko, which is EHR, effective hourly rate. So to your point, if you want to if you're happy with your profits and you want to put fewer hours in per week, then that increases your effective hourly rate, i.e. the profit per hour of your personal time that you put into your business. And I really think also the whole laptop on the beach kind of lifestyle, which is usually used to sell pretty much any kind of business opportunity thing since the dawn of the internet, has a validity behind it, in that what it's implying is that you can have income coming in without putting in excessive time and energy in.
Yeah.
And that's obviously to a degree a myth, but we can certainly get a lot closer to that than most of us do. So absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So what's the starting point for this? There's a specific starting point that I think you mentioned to me before we went on the show.
Well, everything in my e-commerce life boils down to, I think, 2 books, to be honest, maybe 3. Okay, maybe 4, but the top of the list is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. When I was a maniac 9-to-5 employee driving around San Francisco Bay Area, I was the executive director for a charity, and I would literally drive 3 or 4 hours for one conversation with a major donor, and if that makes sense for the effort, you're driving down to the Googleplex to talk to a Google employee about their, charitable giving. That could make a lot of sense. But I would still drive like a maniac. And so I listened on the audio edition of the 4-Hour Workweek. I listened on that book, or listened to it, I would say probably 30 times over 2 years. I mean, I just listened to it over and over. I can recite that book. And so one of the elements of the book that he talks about, his structure, is called DEAL, DEAL. But he also talks about this book and this idea called Parkinson's Law. And I went, and after a few years, I found that book on eBay or somewhere. It's an oldie, like printed like in the 50s or whatever. And this was a business professor. And so this Parkinson's Law thing sort of framed this whole topic for me. And so I'll just quote the one little blurb from it, and then we can jump into these 10 tips. Parkinson law, the full quote, a longer version of the quote, says, "Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Granted that work, and especially paperwork, is thus elastic in its demand on time, it is manifest that there need be little or no relationship between the work to be done and the size of the staff to which it may be assigned. A lack of real activity does not result in leisure. And that is super wise advice for us as e-commerce operators. A lack of activity does not result in leisure. A lack of activity results in fidgets to fill time. And if that's your personal behavior, that's one thing. But if it's your team's behavior, it's really, really damaging to your bottom line. And so that's the quote, and that's the idea behind this, and sort of some of the thinking that goes into this list of 10 tips.
I love that. I mean, I about the same time as you, I suspect. I think I was rereading the actual print edition of the 4 Hour Work, which is dog-eared, underlined,
Mhm.
highlighted. I mean, I guess I've read it less than you, maybe like 5 or 6 times, but I quote it often. I think whatever your misgivings about the idea of the title and anything you think about Tim Ferriss, I happen to be a fan, but a lot of people aren't. I think the wisdom is great. Here's one interesting thought about the Parkinson's law before we go like down a rabbit hole, but it's all related. You said your time is valuable, your team's time actually shows up as a physical cost, but either which way, the one of the ideas that Parkinson came up with is just he spotted a behavior in the British civil service, which I think was his sort of data set in the 1950s, that people would tend to hire 2 people when they sort of moved up the rank in order to not be, to have a bit of competition. So it basically was not just about time expanding, but it was also about staff
Mhm.
expanding and
Mhm.
paperwork. So I think as your
Yep.
organization grows, and if you've
Yep.
got a bigger team, that's also something to really monitor. For example, one of the members of the mastermind we've got has 40 staff, one of whom does some stuff for social media. Now, this is
Mhm.
the owner and CEO, but he has no idea what this guy's doing that he's employing. And I said, you
Yep.
may want to revisit whether you need to have this person and spend the money on something else more effective.
Mhm.
So very easy to do. But anyway, that's just a side note. But so we got your 6 ways of lowering time costs. Let's get into that. What's the
Yep.
first way to lower them?
Well, let me just comment on your blurb about Parkinson. The other thing that
Mhm.
was fascinating in this book, just one little example, is he looked at the period of the Navy between like 1900 and 1921 or something like that, and the number of Navy people, the Navy officers or whatever, or staff. What do you call Navy people?
Personnel, staff. Yeah,
Personnel.
I guess. Yeah,
The
yeah.
number declined and the number of boats declined, but the admiralty like quadrupled. He said, like, how do you have the admiralty quadruple, but the actual boats on the water and the number of people in them has declined radically? So this is an example. He liked to point out things like that in his book. So anyway, so just it's fun examples like that that he points out that makes us all stop and think. Okay, so to the list. Let's do this. Um, the first tip here is cap your personal time involvement with both a positive and a negative boundary. Now, let me explain what a positive and negative boundary is. And Michael, you can maybe help me flush out this idea of and examples of it. But a positive boundary would be something where you have a positive pull of anticipation that pulls you out of your business, you know. And a negative boundary would be a negative like consequence or punishment. In essence, you're getting leverage on yourself to say, I have to be outside my business for either a good reason or a punishment reason, and you do that trick to yourself to get yourself out of the business, and you cap your time, at whatever reasonable total duration of time makes sense for you on a daily basis or weekly basis or whatever. A positive boundary would be, for example, I positively slot in times for our charity that I run our charity, and I don't get paid by our charity. It's volunteer work. And so when I'm running my charity, I can't be running my business. And that positive boundary is a constraint on my schedule, and it's literally on my calendar. And so that's a positive boundary. A positive boundary might be Fridays off. I always take Fridays off. That's my reward for a hard week's work. That's also a negative boundary, I suppose, in a way, because on Thursday you're saying, I gotta get all my work done. If I don't have my work done, whoever I was gonna play around with on Friday and run around town with or do, whatever my activities, I'm not gonna be able to do. So that's the idea of capping and creating boundaries. It's just first thought. So any input on that one, Michael?
Yeah, this is really great. A couple of thoughts. I mean, first of all, I like the fact that you can put it in positive and negative senses, but I suppose sort of endpoints, not working Friday, so you're not allowed to do that, and also positive reasons why. And I
Hmm.
think both are important. And I like the way you put that. It's not commonly put that way in my experience. A couple of thoughts. James Tramko, author of Work Less, Make More, the book of that name, and the person who mentioned EHI, effective hourly rates, goes surfing and limits himself to 20 hours a week and makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year of personal income, which is a great example.
Yeah.
Not in e-commerce, but he has e-commerce clients as his clients, I think. And then the other version is kind of negative, but makes the point that it's hard to do this on your own. If you have a charity of people that, I know you have 60 or so people working within your charity in one form or other, including
Yeah.
volunteers, then you got a lot of people that are depending on you to show up for that. So you have to get the other stuff done. In my case, I'm ashamed, but to admit that my wife is the person who has more discipline than me. And I'm not ashamed. It's just a fact. And she says, right, Mike, it's 11 p.m. Shut the computer down. I'm very much an evening person, not a morning person. So it's not that long a work day. But the other one is she loves going on holiday, and the thing she works incredibly hard when she does work. And so, again, that forces me to complete stuff. Normally, some late nights before we go away, but it does guarantee that I will be forced to leave the computer, and I need to be more responsible for engineering that situation myself, I think. And I'm not alone in that, I think, with my clients as well.
So she's a gift to you, man.
She is totally a gift to me. I mean, she's a very practical lady, incredibly hardworking, but also knows the value of stopping work and enjoying leisure time. And yeah, it's a dose of common sense. And there is something about working for yourself, working from home. Even if you have an office, you may well be forced to, right as we're recording this, in the US or the UK because of COVID regulations. And if you're working online, if you're working for yourself, if you're working on or a small team, or you're the boss of it, all of those tend to point towards workaholism if you're not careful. And that can lead to extremely ineffective outcomes of the work. And there are certain cultures, like I think the US and the UK probably works amongst the worst for workaholism, like just presenteeism. It's the worst possible in Japan, I think, from Japanese students I've taught. They're incredibly, like 12, 14-hour days. But the European, as in the continental Europeans, are a bit better at setting boundaries. And actually the productivity metrics I see from those economies are better. So there is something about even spending longer at work and making your outcomes worse, which is like a double depressing thing.
Yeah. It's diminishing return. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or negative return. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So the
Good.
second idea is to cap your team time in the same manner. And this can be done in several ways. First, I love Elon Musk's quote that the best part is no part.
Me too.
Which speaks to elegance of design. And the best hire is no hire in your team. And so, I think some of us can get our ego inflated when we have team size, kind of growth and all that. But the reality is the most efficient team is the smallest team needed for completion of the work. And we've shared examples of this in the podcast in the past. I shared one example one time when we had 2 full-time employees, and then they both departed, and we replaced them with 4 or 5 very, very part-time team members, and the cost was reduced by 2/3. And the team members that we did have, the 5 people, did a great job, and it was amazing. And that's the team we have now. So sometimes it's not about total headcount. It's about how many people are doing micro jobs maybe, and how those stack differently than a full-time 40-hour work week person. And so, that's the reality for your team time. And this is always a question to ask yourself: do I have the right team on the field? And one of the business, systems that are, maybe from the 90s or whatever, that I remember is called zero-sum budgets or zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is where you literally say for your new upcoming year, let's start with no presupposition of any budget for anything. Let's zero it all out and ask ourselves the question, what do we need to run this business? When you do that, it's brutal, because usually what we do in our minds is we say, well, all of the investments I currently have on the table, including staff and facility and vendors or whatever, are just fixed expenses. But they're not fixed expenses. They're variable expenses. Variable. You can eliminate them from the system. And if that means staffing change or whatever, then that's just the hard truth of running a business. And so I think that's something to think through and really look at is, how do you cap your team time and think about what's appropriate for execution. One of the numbers that I've always liked about businesses is how many dollars per employee are generated. And the best businesses, it's in the millions. And so that's just the reality. And looking at it that way is sort of an interesting twist as well. So, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I really like it. I think one of the things that is a powerful use of time, to your point of eliminating unnecessary processes, and I love that Elon Musk quote as well, is to document, not in an obsessive level, but to a level where you can get the overview of articulating a process, like, I don't know,
Hmm.
creating a
Hmm.
podcast or creating a new product line, or launching a new product. And you document it in sort of big picture, medium picture, and with a view to not, then handing it off to somebody, but just to review it and just go, what can we kick out of here? And one thing I would say is a question of how thoroughly you do things needs to relate to its importance, which sounds really obvious. But if you, for example, I was talking to a client the other day about the time management thing, and I said, okay, look, what percentage of your revenue does your hero product, out of, I think it was 17 product lines, account for? And I said, I bet it's about 50%. He said, yeah, it's 52% or something. It was very, very close. I said, great. So don't stress about the other stuff. Just focus on that. Now, in that case, for example, you might want to break down it, in great detail, how many people are assigned to it, what they do, etc. And then equally, something that doesn't contribute very much, you don't put much time and attention even into the elimination piece. You just go, well, it doesn't matter that much, which is really important and sort of helps that. I guess it's the 80-20 of the 80-20, like one product, one employee, one anything
Hmm.
will often have such a disproportionate effect. It's really worth diving into,
Yeah.
that, and looking for ways to eliminate things within
Yeah.
that process and just let the other stuff happen for the
Yeah.
moment.
Now, as it relates to Elon, because we both, I think, have a healthy appreciation for what he's accomplishing in the world. He's a working maniac and
Yes.
works literally all the time. So I'm not sure he's our guide for this topic in particular, but maybe that's more about who he is and how he's wired.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm not trying to go to Mars. you
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think reality check. What are we trying to accomplish? Well, to be candid, for real, my personal mission, I'm trying to fund my efforts to grow my charity
Hmm.
through working in e-commerce.
Yeah.
So all things being equal, it's the charity that's the most important thing I invest my time in. I'm trying to make a living from e-commerce
Yeah.
and do well by it so that I can grow the charity. And that's very different than trying to say we're trying to get humanity to Mars,
But
So
I think actually Elon Musk and also Jeff Bezos are very similar examples in the broader spectrum things. In that Elon
yeah,
Musk runs Tesla, but he's really passionate about SpaceX,
yeah,
and Jeff Bezos obviously doesn't run anymore, but is the chairman and biggest shareholder, I suppose, of Amazon, but is really wanting to get to into space as well. So they both have the same passion as it happens, and they both
yeah,
really want to they both seem obsessed with space and somewhat interested in the other stuff.
yeah,
So I think it's actually similar a situation in some ways. Elon Musk probably is managing his time, and certainly Jeff Bezos seems to be managing his time. So he's got very little involvement in the
yeah,
third party and retail side of Amazon,
yeah,
and is obsessed with space and doing whatever else he wants to do with his time. So I think it's actually quite similar that you and Elon, you're basically buddies in the way you're
yeah,
approaching
yeah,
stuff.
right.
Apart
Okay,
from the
all right,
net
moving
worth
on.
thing.
Number 3 on our
Number
list
three.
is eliminate your involvement in decisions. And this should actually be eliminate your involvement in work and decisions. And the reason is twofold. One, it takes your time, and two, it slows down your team. So anytime your team has to come to you with a question or decision, it's slowing them down. And so eliminating your involvement is the cornerstone of efficiency in the process. And the truth is, if we have a business process to run our e-commerce companies, we should not be making arbitrary one-off decisions constantly to make that machine, go. If we are, and something needs to be worked on in terms of the system. So eliminating your involvement in decisions, I think, is a revolutionary idea for many people. And if made possible, it will make your team highly efficient just by itself, and it'll free up a lot of time. One of the greatest joys in running a team, and I've heard Cinnamon say this before, is to wake up in the morning and people have just done the stuff. The stuff is just done. She's like, "Hey, the stuff all got done." And there's something really exciting about that and liberating about that when you say to yourself, there's a group doing the thing that I help create and build, but I'm not the one who has to do the work fidget or make the decision related to it. And there's real health and energy in that. And so that's, I think, a big goal maybe for 2022, for people listening could be, eliminate yourself from the decision making process
Mm.
to the greatest extent possible. Yeah.
Utterly agree with that. And that reminds me of a quote from a coach of mine that I've had, Taki Moore, a great, very irreverent Australian. He says, "No work without framework." So to that point, I love your quote as well. We should not be making arbitrary decisions. I love that. You're absolutely right. I mean, basically, if you're going to do something more than once, or your business rather is going to do something more than once, you should have a framework for decision making. And to the extent that you've got a clear framework, you can hand it off. And to the extent that you haven't, it's really hard to hand it off. I was going through my inbox and trying to triage my inbox with my virtual assistant. I said, look, this is going to be really hard to hand off because there are about 100 different types of subtasks here. But what I'm going to suggest is a way forward is that you propose that you want to do something, check with me on Slack, and I'll say yes or no for the stuff that hasn't got an SOP attached. We've got about 10 types of emails that can be just handled with an SOP now. And that's going to take more of my time while I train them up. But I said to him, look, the clear goal within 8 weeks or 12 weeks maybe is for you to just do 2/3 of my inbox without reference to me, and it simply gets archived and I don't see it. And we're on that path. And it's a tricky one to outsource compared to a lot of e-commerce stuff. But it is really, really important to me because I just find that it sucks so much of my time and my energy. And even though I try and be disciplined about handling my inbox, which is a different topic. But that's an example of where creating processes sometimes is messy. But at the end of it, you got that beautiful thing where you wake up and I'm starting to see now that email's been dealt with and they've sent me money for performing that task and I haven't done anything. Like, perfect.
That's powerful, man. Yeah, I love that. Great suggestion. Step 1, get a VA.
Absolutely get a VA, yeah. Or a personal assistant. It would be more powerful if I could afford it to get a personal assistant in the UK. I mean, to work in the same office time. But the Philippines is full of some amazingly great people for $2, $3, $4 an hour. The other thing I want to say about this decision-making thing is simply some decisions matter. So that's why I'm trying to say, if there's money involved, I may need to be more involved. But if there isn't, then I'm less interested. And that brings me to the Jeff Bezos thing, which is really simple but critical, which is differentiating between important decisions that have a big effect, where most people don't do enough analysis, versus unimportant ones where people tend to do too much analysis. We tend to treat all things equal. And that's why an inbox is an awful work management system, because an email is a distinct thing and it looks like it's one thing, but actually one email might imply months of work because you're about to get fined by the IRS or something. And another email is just something you could just delete without a second thought. And it's really critical to differentiate between important and unimportant decisions.
Yeah. Parkinson, in one of his second or third chapters, talks about the law of the trivial. And how what actually happens in a business is, if you have all the time available to you and you don't really need it, you major in the minors and you focus on the triviality. And he said in a lot of business agendas, you can actually see that time is exactly disproportionate, so that the most trivial thing is got the most time invested into it, and the most important thing has the least time invested into it. And he calls it the law of triviality. And I think there's something really wise there about that. Okay, so eliminate your involvement in the decision. That was number 4. Number 3. Number 4 is focus on the system. And I know for a lot of us, we focus on growing revenue first. First thing is sales, and fair enough. I mean, that could take you a couple years just to sort out how do you get sales at scale. But then the second thing is profit, and fair enough. Second thing's profit. But the third thing after that is really what else is there after? Profit isn't a place that you're happy with. It is about building a system that you extract yourself from, and that system is the solution. To quote the old AT&T commercial. The system is what you're building. The system is what you're working on. The system is what's sellable. The system is what makes your business different than just a workplace for you to personally do fidgets. And we all know this. We know that we shouldn't just be building ourselves a job. We should be building a company that runs itself. And so focusing on the system is the fourth big tip here. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think trying to scale e-commerce without also drive you crazy, and that's why a lot of people are going a bit crazy and do 80-hour weeks. And you can get quite a long way if you just focus on Amazon in terms of your top line revenue. How legitimate and real that is another question. But you will, if you keep scaling up and like you're driving a car in first gear, you get up to 18 miles an hour and you get that screaming noise, you know, you need to change gear. And that's a hard thing to do when you've been doing one thing for 3 years, I think. Sorry, for some reason my webcam's shut down. Don't know why.
No
Oh, there we
worries.
go. I'm
No worries.
back.
There you go.
So the other thing to say
Yeah.
is really, I think what you're selling is the system, which is almost what you said, but I'm taking it a step further. You're selling a system that will produce free cash flow. That's really what I want. I don't really want to, I find some types of assets more enjoyable than others. I don't, for example, with real estate, some people really like real estate. I don't personally care about it. For me, it's a machine that produces cash. That's why I want it. It's not because I try and treat my tenants badly or anything like that. It's providing a useful service.
Yeah.
And it's the same with e-commerce. I mean, frankly, you know, some things interest me more than others, but that's what it is. And I think if you haven't created a system that produces, you know, consistent cash flow, then it's just not sellable. And to your point, if it requires a lot of your time, that's almost more of a symptom of a lack of system than it is the cause necessarily, or it's, you know, could be chicken and egg there, I guess.
Yeah, and some of this, honestly, as we read through this list, and I'm pointing all the fingers back at myself, some of this comes down to our own personal mindset. Do we operate in such a way that we focus on the framework and the system? Or do we operate in such a way that we're like a triage nurse and inbound drama is just coming at us all day long? It's inbound drama. I make money from inbound drama. That is not an e-commerce operation you want to sell or run. That's not a good way to do your life unless you want to be a triage nurse.
Yeah.
But then go do that. But the reality is, we need to focus on the system, and it's a mindset thing
To that
more than
point,
anything else. Yeah.
I think you're right. And to your point, I think I know some people, I knew a couple of people who wanted to be paramedics because they like the adrenaline rush. And I
Yeah.
think it is kind of quite addictive and it makes you feel very important. And obviously, paramedics and nurses are really important. And we kind of are really important, but we need to be willing to let go of that adrenaline rush of importance personally, because it can't move forward without a decision from me right now, to this point where we enjoy standing back and watching. The creativity isn't in the activity, so the technician level, if you like, it's moving through the classic, what do you call it, the E-Myth revisited levels, isn't it? That we don't get the buzz from doing stuff, we don't even get the buzz from managing people well, although that is a big step up. We get the buzz from creating a system that means we can just stand back and let it work day to day. So we've laid out the railway tracks, we've made sure that somebody's running the trains on time. We just stand back and look at it, stand back, look at our works and declare that it is good. It's the seventh day thing, you know, isn't it? Seventh day of Genesis, not day
Michael
one.
quoting the Bible on
Yeah,
me.
look at me. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I don't mean to
All
be,
right,
you know,
there you go.
disrespectful, but there you go.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like we
that's
should be aiming to be, you know,
too
the
right.
creator of a mini universe that runs on its own without us interfering. And
Exactly
you're
right.
absolutely right. And there is an addictiveness and an excitement about that triage nurse drama that you've.
Mhm.
I'm certainly run things that way by default. And I
Mhm.
think, yeah, you're right. It's hard to wean yourself off it, but wean this if we must.
Well, to make it meta in a way, to your point, the thing that we focus on doing is selling products, digital products, physical products, products that we bought at wholesale and markup, products we had manufactured. But the reality is, what we're actually building is a business. And the obsession with building that business so you can sell that business is the product. That is the product that you're working on as the CEO. And so there you have it. So yeah.
Absolutely right.
Okay,
Great.
number
So
four,
that's
that was
number
number
4. Yeah. What's
yeah.
number 5? Sorry.
Yeah, so these get now real practical, tactical. This next list of 5, and we've got a couple more, and then you've got 4 questions. I've got 2 more here on my side of the list, and then you've got 4 great questions. So they'll become very practical here, and we would just challenge the listeners to think through how to implement these practical suggestions in 2022. So the 5th tip is count your time. And here's what I would suggest everybody do: just take 1 week where you're, a normal work week, and do back of the envelope, of the 7 days, how many hours a day did you do? Just tabulate it on a post-it note or whatever. And then times that by 20, by 52. And you'll get your total average time spent in your business for the year. Now, if you're paying a full-time regular employee in the United States, the total hours you calculate — I used to be a compensation analyst, was my first job — the total hours I always remember is 2,080 hours for the year is what you use for full-time equivalency of an employee. And I believe that was 168 hours a month. So that's how you look at what a full-time person would be paid: 2,080 hours. And so what you want to ask yourself, to question related to in terms of counting your time is, are you working full time in your business? Maybe you're not, and maybe extract full time wages from a part time gig. Thumbs up. Maybe you extract part time wages from a doubly full time gig. Thumbs down. And so, that's the thinking here in terms of counting your time. You obviously know what your employees are submitting in terms of their time, in terms of if they're an hourly person giving you part-time work, every time period, or if they're a full-time regular employee, what you're paying them. So it's a little bit different exercise to work on your team effort this way. But for your personal effort, just count your time as the fifth tip here. Any thoughts on that, Michael? And the sixth one goes related to it, but let's mention this one first. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important that there's that Peter Drucker quote that what gets measured gets done. I love Peter
Hmm.
Drucker. It's so hands-on and it's intellectually cogent and yet it's very practical. And that's really true. So if you're not measuring your time, you're probably just not aware of how you're spending it. I use toggle.com religiously, which I'm doing right now. It's tracking away the fact that I'm recording a podcast for the e-commerce leader.
Ooh.
And I organize it by projects, including the e-commerce leader is one of the projects, or multiple products.
What's it called? What's the domain name?
It's Toggle, TOGGL.com. And it's free. And what I'm less good at doing is looking back at it weekly, monthly, and quarterly and analyzing how I'm spending my time. Partly because, just exactly like looking at financial numbers, I'm afraid that it's going to reveal some pretty hard truths. And so that's something I need to get better at doing. But at least I'm tracking it. So what I would say is an old business partner of mine, who's literally a rocket scientist or trained in rocket science, who's very effective. Very, very effective website operator for like about a 9-figure business now, or at least he's part of their team. And he said, yeah, look, the thing about data is you can mess around with it later, but just collect it first and keep it accurately. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can analyze it. So I really need to sit
Love
down
that.
and do some analysis, but I really love toggle.com. Very simple to use. You just go click, click, and you're measuring. So
Yep.
that's really good.
Okay, I love that. So that's the fifth tip. The sixth tip is just related to it, which is just calculate your true time value. And so let's just say you have a theoretical perfect full-time job, and in the American classic sense of the term, 2,080 hours a year invested into your business. Then the question is, what's your effective hourly rate? And I would just encourage you to just divide your prior year personal income, W-2 money extracted from your business and owner's draws, and divide it by the total number of hours that you have in that tip 5, and get yourself an effective or accurate hourly rate. If your hourly rate, I would throw this out on the table. If your hourly rate is something below what you deem to be a reasonable full-time professional job, and $50 an hour, for example, that's $104,000 a year of income. So, all things being equal, is that going to change the world for you? No, but would you consider that a full-time professional wage? Sure. That's in the ballpark. So that's $50 an hour. So if you use some math like that and ask yourself, are you honestly paying yourself a professional wage in association with your time? Then you're going to get some clarity on either lowering your time involvement or extracting greater revenue or profit, sorry, from your business. One of those two things, to right size your personal investment. Because I can tell you one thing: if you sell your company, the person who buys it is either going to hire somebody to run it or run it themselves, and they're going to expect some fair compensation for their time and effort. And you can't get to the place where you want to sell your business and say, oh, PS, this takes 95 hours a week to run, for the whatever it is, X
Yeah.
amount of income. You can't do that. It won't work. And so we got to think ahead and begin with the end in mind and ask ourselves these hard questions. Yeah.
Yeah, like that a lot. And what I think is really great about this kind of metric is that you're combining the two really critical things, which is money and time. The only nuance I'd add, and you may have meant this, but I think it's important to state it explicitly, is you're not allowed to use revenue divided by hours as a number,
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
because otherwise, if you're an Amazon seller, that can make you look like a genius very quickly because it's not that hard to scale the revenue. It needs to be your profit.
That's
And
meaningless.
which
Yeah.
one? Yeah. Is it pre-tax profit? I guess if you're comparing it with a wage, it's probably a pre-tax profit. The tax structure, obviously,
Yeah.
for wages versus business profits can be extremely different. So even then, I'd kind of prefer to compare net of tax profits would be more meaningful. But either,
Okay.
even your pre-tax
Yeah.
profit is at least a
Yeah.
great starting point. And I think it's critical to say that, because a lot of us just kind of kid ourselves that it kind of doesn't matter. And I see that a lot. And I see people working for $25,000 a year in profit. That isn't their cash flow into their personal bank account. That's just profit that they own in theory, which has to go back into to stock, really.
No,
And that's
yeah, that's
kind
a
of tragic. That is very
horrible
common.
way to look at it.
Yeah.
What I'm asking people to do is act as if you're an employee in your business, just like if
Mhm.
you had an employee that was you.
Yeah.
And how are you paying them? So in that regard, I would say it's the hourly rate you would be paying them that goes into their checking account. Again, for you, it's either through W-2 payroll money or owner's draws if you're an LLC structured as an S corp, which most of us are in the U.S. And so that's pre-tax, I suppose you could say. And just like an employee would say, well, what's my salary?
Yeah.
And you don't say, well, pre-tax or post-tax. You just say your salary is 80,000 a year, or
Sure.
50,000 a year, or 120,000 a year, whatever it is.
Mm.
And I think all of us need to do that as e-commerce operators and ask ourselves those hard questions.
Agreed.
So there you go. So that's 6
Yeah.
tips, and then now we've got 4 powerful questions. Michael, you want to lead us through those?
Sure. So the first thing to say is to acknowledge this is also from the 4-Hour Work Week. I'm going to kind of rephrased it, but I just think they're pretty beautifully put.
Sure.
The first question is, what are the top 3 activities I used to feel as though I've been productive? And this is more like very, very tactical day-to-day level. For me, the hint would be email. That can take up so much time. Literally, the last conversation I had, well, actually, the last client I worked with, but we've had a couple of sessions this week. And one was, he said to me, before we implement X, Y, and Z, and we were looking at various things he was struggling with, how do I find time to implement this stuff? And we looked at what he was doing, and I said, unsurprisingly, I said, how do you deal with email? He said, oh, I have a monitor open to it the entire day, and it has notifications and everything else. I said, right, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to not do that. You're going to get rid of any notifications. You're going to have to manually refresh it, and you're going to check it 3 times a day. I said, I know that's, for you, that's going to be a painful translation. It's like 11 a.m., 2 p.m. and whatever before you leave work, 6 p.m., whatever it is. And we spoke 3 days later, and he said, wow, I'm really getting withdrawal symptoms from it, but my goodness, I've got a lot of time. And it really was an immediate change. So there you go. Email's always a good hint. Social media is the other one. Just because you've got a Facebook account and people comment on it doesn't mean that as a CEO, it's the best use of your time to comment on random brain farts from people who may never consume a penny of your stuff.
Too right.
So, there you go. That's the first one.
All of us need to ask ourselves the question, for us personally, what is it? It feels like an activity that's important, but actually isn't. I know for me, over the last few weeks, we're recording this on the 9th of January. Over the Christmas holiday, we had COVID, and it was also Christmas holiday a couple weeks, and New Year's. And so we just didn't do any meetings. And after the first week of no meetings, we had just postponed or canceled all of our, consulting meetings. And I said to Cinnamon, this feels like the first real honest to goodness vacation I've had in a long time. I mean, just like no meetings. And what I realized is I've filled my schedule a bit too much, and I already take Fridays off. I have no meetings on Fridays already. But to have the whole week with no meetings felt to me like, wow, total liberation. So, I think when we go through these periods and we look at what activities we're doing in our business, the question is, are they the highest and best use of our time? And that's a powerful question. So there you go. I love that. That's the first question. So we're calling that number 7. What else you got on the list?
Okay, the next one is to your question of the highest and best use of my time. If I only accomplish this one task, will I be satisfied with my day? And I really love this question because I've got this terrible tendency, and I know myself now. If I write a to-do list for a day, it's probably at least a week for any human. I mean, including myself, I'm reasonably productive when it comes to sort of minutiae and getting through detailed stuff. But I know how ridiculous I am. So I have to sort of not even 80-20. I need to just look through and go, right, what's the one single thing? If I get to the end of the day, my version of this question is, am I going to hate myself for not doing X? And if you're a sort of person that's somewhat pain motivated, I'm like, what am I going to get to the end of the day and go, oh my goodness, Mike, I can't believe you didn't know X. I try and look forward to the end of the day, look back and go, what am I going to hate myself for if I don't get it done? And that's quite an effective question for me personally. And I'm sorry, it doesn't sound very positive. And, it is real reality for me that it works. Maybe because I'm an artistic perfectionist type, and that's the way my brain works. But it's really effective if you can discipline yourself to do that.
If I only accomplish this one thing today, will I be satisfied with my day? So, can I ask you about your thing? Because this is very interesting to me. Is it
Yeah.
different every day for you, or is it one secret thing that you say, "This is my secret, my secret thing I have to do every day to feel productive"?
It goes in projects. So at the moment,
Okay.
like I'm basically going, have I moved my book forward? Because you and I did an interview about a year and a half ago where I promised on air to you and the listening nations that I was going to create a book within a few months, and I haven't. That was 18 months ago, and I'm thinking this is ridiculous. I definitely a writer at some level doesn't mean I've got the craft nailed yet, but I'm a very detailed person. I'm a very verbal person. It's got to be something that is somewhere in the top 4 or 5 activities I should be good at, and I want to do it. And then so therefore I'm frustrated with myself at the end of the day that I've not moved that forwards, and that happened yesterday, for example, and I made the excuse that I had to fit on a computer system, but the reality is I'm using the same camera I was going to use anyway on the same computer, and the other computer I was going to try and link it with, did it really make any difference? No. So I managed to waste an hour doing something that felt productive but ultimately was not. So there you go. So I've broken my own rules, but today, and I suppose I'm saying this live on air again, I'm going to work for 1 hour on my book, not more. But if I get to the end of the day and I've done one solid hour, move the book forward in a way that I can tick off on my spreadsheet, I'll be like, okay, that was a worthwhile day.
You know what's crazy? It's the exact same thing for me.
Really? But you
My
produce
sec
so many books. You're
my
so good at producing books.
my secret my only valuable contribution to a day, in my
Mm,
view, frequently is, have I written, a good solid, chunk towards my next book.
nice.
And it doesn't mean that the consulting we do isn't important and valuable and all that, but if at the end of the day I say I didn't have time to write, I say something screwed up and I'm not happy. And so, and yeah, I mean, whatever, I don't know. On Kindle, I think I have 11 or 12 books plus other
Yeah.
ebooks that aren't on Kindle that we sell through or use through our site. I love to write. Writing is what makes me feel like I'm producing something for a legacy that will be listened to or looked at after I'm dead, you know? I mean, like, it is the permanent record of our life, something that's published like that. So, to me, I'm a teacher at heart. I love to write and it makes me feel energized, not de-energized. And so it gives me a frame to run my life with, is if I'm being a constructive writer. I'm not happy with my work in that regard. It's a toil. It's always not good enough. It's always not completed. It's always not, even once the books are done, they were never good enough. And I will one day be a New York Times bestselling author, or I won't be, but that's always been the goal. And so I love it. And so to me, that's the one thing, which
I
is
think you're going to
fascinating.
be Neil. I think you're going to be the bestseller author. I see no reason why not. I mean, you're very quotable. For example, you just said writing is the permanent record of my life. That's
Mm,
a great reason. That's a very powerful reason to write. I like it. But also the fact that you're fairly consistent with what matters to you, whereas I tend to
mhm.
go through sort of phases and projects, which is not terrible. But it's interesting that if you obsess about one thing every single day of your life, you're probably going to get pretty good at that one thing, and you'll get known for that one thing, and that's probably going to have more impact in your business life than getting known for 10 things to a mediocre degree, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
love
the
it.
trap I fall into. Well, so that's the eighth question. Quite a powerful
No, 8th
question.
8th is coming up. 8th is coming up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or no, sorry,
That we've
9th and
just
then
done that, I
10th.
think. Yeah,
Yeah, 9th and
yeah.
10th.
So ninth one is similar to what activities do I use to feel productive, but not quite the same. Are you inventing things to avoid the important? So my
Mhm.
example I've just gave, I invented fiddling around with my laptop, which I've now repaired, had the screen repaired for. Just come back from 2.5 weeks away. I want to kind of run everything through that laptop instead of the desktop computer I'm using, but they're both Macs. They're both got the same. They're both about the same era, and there's not actually much difference. So really, would it have made much more difference to my life if I'd just let that ride for a couple of weeks and just written the book last night? No. I mean, I just invented something brand new. I haven't even spent time fiddling with the computer system for months. And to avoid writing, because I at some level I'm probably afraid I'm going to write a terrible book, and then I'm going to put hundreds of hours of work into it, and then it won't sell, and I'll feel like an idiot. And I guess I can sense why I made an excuse, but it was an excuse.
Deep psychology is happening
Yeah,
here in this
it is.
podcast.
This is the psychology of procrastination is fascinating because there's always
Yeah,
deeper psychology behind it, in my
yeah,
opinion, my experience.
right. Am I
Yeah,
inventing things to avoid the important?
yeah,
Powerful question, man.
yeah,
And I think you're right, because the important stuff frequently does take mental and emotional energy.
Mm.
It takes something deeper, something that's not just a mindless work fidget. And the mindless work fidgets sometimes are soothing. It's almost like, oh, I know I can achieve this, and I know this work fidget I can get done. I can
Yes.
make this tweet, or I can make this social, post on Facebook. I know I can do that. I know I can stir up controversy on Facebook or whatever. And those are easy things, and the hard things are the important things.
To
Yeah.
your point, I think you're absolutely right. So the work fidgets are quite soothing, and I think it's really, really a big trap and a yawning trap is to feel like a very productive person. You make a list of 20 things, one of which is, for example, for you, and at the moment for me, writing a chapter of a book or something like that, or 1,000 words, whatever it is. And then the other 19 are things like stirring up controversy on Facebook in order to get
Mhm.
some likes, which lead to no revenue and nothing good. In fact, now you've got a reputation for being a guy who stirs up problems on Facebook groups. And the other 18 probably includes emails that don't matter, and hassling your VA about some minutiae that you won't remember in 24 hours. And I'm good at all those, by the way. So the biggest danger is writing a long list. I think you need to write a list of one per day, and
Mhm.
then you can add 3 or 4 if you like, but actually it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It reminds me of that metaphor where they have all a glass jar, and then they've got the boulders and the smaller rocks and the gravel and the water. And if you do it in the wrong order, you can't fit it all in. And if you do it in the right order, you can fit everything in. And the right order is to put the big things in first. You have to put the big things in first. That's the trick. And so there you go. Uh, uh, Vivian asked a quick question. Michael, can you please share the website that you use for time tracking again on your projects?
Sure, it's called toggle.com, TOGGL.com. Really, really great system.
Love it. We've created quite a list of resources here. I'm keeping track here on our little working document, which we'll put them in the show notes. But this is a great one. Okay, so let's bring it home, man. What's the 10th tip here for reducing the time costs in your business?
It's really simple, but it's one to ask yourself throughout the day. Are you trying to multitask? Because if you are, you're wasting your time. Human brains don't multitask. They're like CPUs, actually. They task switch. And, there are many claims like women multitask better than men. Well, as I understand the psychology, and I do actually know a brain scientist, like a neuroscientist, that's not how it works. They're just better at task switching. But there is a cost, just like with your CPU, in switching multiple tasks, which is why if you open 70 tabs on your browser, and I've literally had people screen share with me sometimes when they are doing that, your computer will run incredibly slowly, and your mental computer's even less good at multitasking. It's just not going to do it. So don't do it. Shut everything down and focus on one thing for an hour, and you'll be way more productive than you do 4 hours of eating your dinner whilst checking emails and Facebook, and then also trying to write a chapter.
Yeah, no, this is really, really powerful idea. Are you trying to multitask? Not to put too fine a point on it in any way, shape, or form, but um, if you're around people who you're talking to and they're literally looking at their phone while you're talking to them, and you just think about what's happening in that relationship, you're literally like, what is happening right now? And it's so funny when you run into that. And the reality is, if people think they can multitask, and your relationship is one of the tasks,
Yeah, yeah.
that's not right.
A lot of us do that. I mean, my wife does that to a degree, and I know that she's one of those people that loves to multitask because she's got a brain that fizzes like a top and
Yeah,
incredibly clever and swift-brained, and she needs to do 3 things at once in order to feel relaxed, which is a sign of somebody who needs to maybe
yeah.
meditate a bit more. I'm somewhat like that, but you're so right. And actually, if you think about it from a business point of view, if you are driving a car and you're having a conversation with somebody, now it's illegal to do it if you're holding a phone, but apparently the crash statistics are very similar whether you're holding a phone or whether you don't look at it, because your brain is focused on processing verbal cues and social cues from the other person. And I think if you think of your business as a dangerous activity that requires focus in a risky environment, well, that describes most e-commerce to me.
Wow.
Then
Yeah.
you really shouldn't be driving whilst yapping on your phone to your friend. You should be concentrating on one thing at a time because it's difficult enough.
Yeah.
And I really think that's true. And you're right. Yeah, in terms of relationships, it's a disaster. I mean, really, I kind of sit there if people are doing that, and I kind of sometimes playfully get my phone out and just start tapping in order to make the point that, like, maybe we should focus on each other and have a chat
Mm,
over lunch. The art of conversation.
powerful.
But Yeah, good stuff.
Okay, man, what a list.
Yes, quite a
I want to
list, isn't it?
mention before we wrap up our list of resources that we mentioned and the books we kind of casually dropped in. And
Yeah.
but let me do a recap if you want of the 10 real fast, as is our custom here. Shall we rattle through them?
We yes, we should. I've got one bonus one if I can just add that in.
Oh,
I don't know what
bonus.
we're going to call it. Let's call it a bonus one, which is from Dan Kennedy. He talks about getting lost. In other words, not being available for communication. And that's especially if you want to do creative work, you'll need to decrease your availability, or your brain will never focus on one thing. So check email once or twice a day. That's a Tim Ferriss classic. And absolutely, I actually do this and it does work. Limit your direct availability on the phone or instant chats apps, and just have one channel you use for emergency contact. Yeah, it's really important to be available, but also not to be available. And you need to just set a rhythm and communicate that rhythm to your team and to your clients. And I tell my clients this repeatedly, and they generally play ball. If they need to reschedule something within 24 hours, they will Skype me or send me a text, because if they email me, they discover that I just haven't got it. So it does work.
Yeah.
It does work. You just have to communicate and be gracious about it.
Yeah.
And it really does work. You just have to have faith and follow through.
Bonus tip, get lost.
Bonus tip. Yeah.
I love it. It reminds me of Ron, my mentor's thing, where he leaves his business cell phone in his truck all weekend long, and he doesn't,
Yeah.
he's not in his truck.
Yeah.
So he's just not available.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, let's have the recap then.
Okay, the recap is 11 tips for reducing the time cost in your business. Number 1, cap your personal time involvement with positive and negative boundaries. Number 2, cap your team time. Number 3, eliminate your investment in decisions. Eliminate your involvement in decisions. Number 4 is focus on the system. Number 5 is count your time for the year. Number 6 is calculate the true cost of your time to your business. Number 7 is ask yourself, what are the 3 top activities you use to feel as if you're being productive. Number 8 is, if you only accomplish one thing in a day, what is it that would satisfy you? Number 9 is, are you inventing things to avoid the important? And if so, what are they? And how do you deal with them? Number 10 is, are you trying to multitask? That doesn't work. Number 11 is get lost. And so I love those. The resources that we mentioned today in this conversation include The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, Parkinson's Law by Professor Northcote Parkinson, Work Less, Make More by James Schramko, Perry Marshall's 80/20 Sales and Marketing. But there's also another 80/20 book by another guy. I can't remember the author name.
Richard Koch, I think, Koch. So he wrote
And
the
that's
book.
a great one as well.
Yeah.
And then Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited. And then The Effective Executive, Peter Drucker. And then I don't know if Dan Kennedy had a book that comes out of. Michael, you're
Yeah, I think it's No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs, if I remember correctly.
No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs. Awesome. And then the resource tracking tool that you mentioned, Michael, is toggl.com, TOGGL.com.
Exactly right.
Love it. What a conversation. Thank you so much for your wisdom on this stuff.
You too.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Of course, Michael and I are both available for one-on-one conversations and consulting. You can hit us up on the ecommerceleader.com to find links to our personal consultancies. And we're happy to work with you in 2022 to make your business more effective. I've got a couple slots. Michael, I don't know what your dance card looks like, but we do have high bars. We work with people who are basically veteran operators and really have opportunities to enhance and improve their existing businesses, not so much with startups, I guess I should say. But it's an honor to be able to collaborate with our clients and the community that we're serving. It's growing, and we're excited to see more and more people added every week as they listen to our podcast episodes. So Michael, thank you as always. It's an honor.
Pleasure. And to the point of joining the growing throngs, especially on Spotify, a lot of people are subscribing. Don't forget to subscribe if you're on Spotify, Apple, whatever. If you're on Apple Podcasts, we'd love a review or even just a rating, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars, as you see fit. And then we're on the Call-In Show as well, which is a brand new app. I believe it's iPhone only, and we're there every Tuesday. Is it 8 a.m. Pacific these days?
Yeah, and that show's blowing up, man.
Yeah.
We actually are like in the top charts. We're number 15 podcast in education category on the Call-In app, and we 10x'd. Have you seen our stats? We 10x'd.
I have not. No, that's really
our
exciting
listenership
news.
in the last week and a half or 2 weeks. The numbers have just literally 10x'd.
Nice.
And so I don't know if they're just getting more traffic to that app. It's becoming more popular, or somehow because we're in the top charts, we're getting more listeners on the Call-In app. But we're really grateful for everybody who checks us out. That show includes Kyle Hamer and Chris Green, and it's a roundtable conversation with hot takes, hot tips on various topics. And so be sure to check that one out as well. Callin.com, Call-In app. All right, Michael, I'm going to end it there since your web camera just broke. It's a good time to stop.
Okay.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
buddy. Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for your time.